Hi, and welcome back to another AnyRPG Development Livestream. In these videos, I livestream the development of the AnyRPG Engine, a 100% free and open source role-playing game engine designed in Unity and written in C#. These videos are unscripted and give you a chance to take a behind-the-scenes look at the unfiltered, methodical side of software development. For more information on AnyRPG, be sure to check out AnyRPG.org, where you can find documentation on the engine, links to the full source code at the official GitHub repository, and downloadable versions of AnyRPG Alpha, a free game designed to showcase the features of the AnyRPG engine. If you'd like to see more of this type of content in the future, be sure to like the videos, subscribe to the Cohesion YouTube channel, or just leave a message in the comments telling me what you would like to see. In today's episode, we will be continuing the creation of our exportable package for Unity. And before we get started on that, though, there was one thing that I noticed in our special Halloween episode, and that was that our dragon Draco was flying properly, but the witch wasn't animating properly when she was moving. And I went through and had a look at her animations, and I did have to go change one thing here on her animations, and I'll just show that right here. So the witch's motion, the weight one here, if we look at that, we can see loop time and loop pose are checked right now, but those actually were unchecked, so it would only go through a single cycle and then she would stop. But the movement isn't working actually for a completely different reason, and I didn't notice this earlier, so I think we need to actually go through and fix that. So if you look at the old animation controller, what is it? I think will center it. Yeah, there we go. If you look at the old animation controller here and you look at the the old one, there we go. The parameters list, we've got a whole pile of parameters here, and if you look at the new animation controller, we don't have all those parameters. So even though I copied this list in right here, and you can just copy and paste that entire object, it doesn't copy and paste in the parameters. And one thing I noticed is that if you add the parameters afterwards, like I added, for example, is dead right here. So if you go over to this transition, it still says parameter does not exist. So I think what potentially needs to be done is these parameters maybe need to be added first, and then have all that stuff pasted in. So we're just going to go through and fix that. And so let's just take a look at what we're missing here. So if we look at the old one, we have moving, strafing, in combat, and is dead as the top ones. So let's just move those up. Moving, strafing, in combat, and is dead. And then looking at the old one, we should have casting, stunned, levitated, and attacking. So let's add some booleans. Casting, stunned, levitated, and attacking. Next, we have animation speed as a float and jumping as an int. So animation speed, just make sure, yeah, that's spelled right, okay. And then jumping as an int. Okay, and then we have velocity x, velocity z, and velocity y. So we'll make sure we have those three values as floats. And then we have a turn velocity, and that's a float as well, so we'll add that. Actually, it looks like we have it there. Okay, so then we need an idle trigger, an attack trigger, and a jump trigger. So let's add those, and those are triggers. So we have idle trigger, and then jump trigger, and then attack trigger. And I couldn't find any way like to copy these. Like you can't select multiples. If you right click on them, delete is the only option. If you right click on parameters, you can't really do anything. And obviously if you copy the whole controller, you'll get all of the stuff that was attached to it. And if you haven't seen the other episode, basically we have a controller with like 42 megabytes of transition data inside of it here, which Unity is basically not showing us and not deleting. So we had to create a new controller so that we don't have all this junk in here. This also contains references to a whole pile of animations we weren't using, and so Unity was trying to include them in the package when we were exporting it. So all this work we're doing now with just basically copying and making an exact copy of our animation controller is just to overcome that limitation of the UI here to get rid of that stuff. So idle trigger, jump trigger, attack trigger, death trigger, revive trigger. Take damage trigger, casting trigger. Stun trigger and levitate trigger. Okay, let's just look at those, and everything looks completely identical in terms of the parameters. And let's just make sure that our layers are okay here as well. So we have base layer, IK, mask, none, blending override, and IK pass checked. So if we go over to this controller here, okay, we don't have IK, and I think everything else looks the same, none and override. So let's just go back to that. The old one, yeah, override, none. Okay, good. So then what I want to do actually is I just want to go in and like this stuff I don't think is gonna, well, what do you know? Okay. It looks like I don't have, am I looking at the new one? Just make sure I'm looking at the new one. Okay, I don't think we have to recopy it. Actually, it looks like as soon as we put those parameters in, then everything looks okay. Yeah. All right. So let's save that, and then we can just go to test this. I want to go see if my witch can actually like move her legs now. So we'll just go back to that Halloween game, and where is she? She's my player. And actually one thing that I just want to do really quickly is her shadow on the ground. It looked really funny, so we're just going to disable the shadow completely. And then we still have the Halloween load game manager open here, so let's try it out. Okay, play new game, yes. Okay, so there you can see basically like her idle animation is working properly now because we looped it, and her walk animation is working properly. She finally moves her legs. Cool, so, whoa. That's odd. Whoa, she's moving sideways at like... Ah, we got desynced from her somehow. Our camera... wow, okay. Our camera and her model are operating at different speeds. That's a really interesting bug. So... Wow, I've never seen that happen before. This, now she's like going through the ground too. Yeah. Interesting. Her model is totally desynced. You can tell like we're walking around here. And she's just like not catching up to us. Okay. Let's see if we can figure out. I wonder if that has anything to do with her shadow. She might have like a root motion bone or something. The only difference, I mean, other than fixing the transitions in the animation controller, was this bit right here. So let's re-enable the shadow. I don't know, that probably isn't the reason, but maybe. So then we can go to new game. Well, what do you know? Apparently, like, her shadow is actually needed for her animations to work. She doesn't have a jump animation there. Wow, that's crazy. Oh, no, she's still becoming desynced. No, maybe that has nothing to do with it. That is so odd. Oh, you know what it is? Okay, so basically, this is a legacy character model that this witch is using, and I think I'll have to go maybe spend some time to try to figure this out later offline. But our little witch is using a legacy character model, and the legacy character model is not compatible with a humanoid rig. And when I press forward, you can see she moves forward properly because she's got a forward animation, but she doesn't have a strafe left animation. So when I'm hitting the left key here, like my character's moving, but she is not. And when I hit the right key, it's actually moving her model right, like strafing right, which is kind of interesting. But on the left, it's not doing it. So that's really interesting. Kind of artifact there. And so if we go to her, let's see, if I go to the Halloween Witch unit here and we look at the animation profile we set on here, the Halloween Witch, it's really interesting that like the strafe left clip doesn't move her, but the strafe right clip does. Yeah, so basically because the default animator used on her unit. If we go back to her player unit right here, and let's see, we look at the animation controller, and then if we open that up in here, and we look at, let's see, out of combat movement, which is a blend tree. And there's the blend tree. So basically, we have walk, strafe, left here. And for some reason, walk, strafe, left isn't moving her. But when we go right, walk, strafe, right, it actually is moving her. And let's see if there's a difference between those. Basically just the mirroring and the cycle offset. Interesting. I think for now, like that's good enough. I don't expect like generic models to work properly with the default animations. So I think we'll just sort of move on from here and go back to our other work. But it looks like at least now we've fixed that issue with the character controller missing all the parameters here. So let's continue our exporting. We had reached the point in our example level where we could get to the end of our quest chain from the Soulforge, and so now we're going to start with the Birch Grove units. So that includes Sir Invincible, Master Impassive. We already have a vendor in there. Yeah, we already have a vendor, so we'll just keep him, and then the Apprentice Craftsman. So let's copy all of those guys, and then we'll move them down into our examples folder under AI characters. And then going down to our examples folder under AI characters, we'll call this guy example Sir Invincible. Example Apprentice Craftsman. And example Master Impassive. And then let's load up the scene and pull these guys into it. First, actually, let's just remove their other character models. So Sir Invincible and Master Impassive have the knight models on them, so we just need to remove those. And instead, I'm just going to make these guys into UMA characters. So what we'll do is we'll just add the dynamic character avatar component, and then I believe we'll also need the character animation event receiver as well. And the character unit is itself. And I'm not going to give them equipment profiles. Not yet, anyway. And then character, faction manager. Okay, everything else looks okay. And then we just have to change basically all their references. so that they're pointing to the example versions of everything. And we can remove that because that's automatically handled now by our system configuration manager. And we can change those out for our, what do we need? Question invincible. And then find help. And then this we can remove because that's handled by the system configuration manager also. This needs to be example human unarmed attacks, and just make sure that that animation controller is updated to the new one. And then for his character unit, we can just fix that up and just have it pointing directly to head because we're now capable of recursively searching the bones. For character model game object, I'm just going to have none there. His name is example Sir Invincible, and his faction is example Sunsworn. Okay, that looks good. So let's do master impassive next. So we will open up master impassive. He's got the paladin model. We don't need that. We don't need to put the animator on the base component too, I don't think, because I'm pretty sure that UMA just creates an animator. If we don't have one, that may or may not be true. So we'll take off his equipment manager for now. This will be question impassive, the example version, and then change the message points for nothing because that's handled by our system configuration manager. Change those for example human unarmed attacks and replace that with a new animation controller. Get rid of all this stuff. Oh, yeah, I might have to change those, right, because I'm actually looking for the UMA model's head bone. So his faction is example Sunsworn, example master impassive, and I think that's okay. And then we have the example apprentice craftsman, so let's open him up. He's already an UMA character, so that makes things, actually, yeah, let's just look at all the components he has in him. So he's an UMA character. Question the apprentice. So example question the apprentice, and then we have example jewelry and example woodworking, example tailoring, example blacksmithing, example a hard day's work, refined tastes, fine robes, example a dragon's blade, gem and shrine staff. I was actually thinking it will be kind of funny because I don't have plate armor, is that I could actually keep this a heavy suit of armor in quest and just do like invisible plate armor, so you put it on and you still get the stats and you're naked, and that actually might even be a good demonstration of the fact that like armor stats and their models really are sort of disconnected and don't necessarily rely on each other. It'd be cool to be able to do like some sort of, what do you call it, like glamour, or I can't remember what the Warcraft name for it is right now, but basically changing your armor models to whatever you want. Example, you are prepared. Transmogrification, that's what they called it in Warcraft, I think. A light suit of armor here. Example, a light suit of armor. Gather all the things. Alright, good, that looks okay. Those are all the example quests, except for a heavy suit of armor, because I think I actually deleted like the example, a heavy suit of armor, because I didn't have, yeah. So I'll have to recreate that actually. In fact, why don't we do that right now? So we're going to duplicate a heavy suit of armor, and then we're going to pull that down into the quests, way down here in our example folder. So quest. We're going to actually, we'll rename that back to resources so our game can find it. And then actually, I totally forgot, like while we were making the Halloween game, we also dragged over some stuff that we need back here. So I need to grab everything from base ability direct system and make sure that that lands back in here. So base ability direct system, grab all those and just move them back. And then we have also the ability effects, and we have instant system effects, so we'll want to move those back down here. And then the one system status effect we'll want to move back down here as well. Okay, that's better. That's just like a little cleanup of that Halloween game. So then, let's see, we're working on example the apprentice, and I think everything looks okay. Column example. Oh, and we need to change his faction as well. Yeah, okay. I don't know if the find command is case sensitive or not, but since these are UMA guys, let's see, we do have an animator component. Okay, so we have an animator component attached to our UMA units. Let's see, was there anything else here? And the character animation event receiver, of course. Okay, so I do need to attach an animator component, and we should update this to the new animation controller instead of the old one. And actually, I'm just going to copy this component directly, and then we can go back to our example AI guys and go to master and passive, and just, oh, we already have an animator directly on him. Okay, so that's fine then. And we'll just change that unit frame target to head, and actually, example apprentice craftsman. Oh, I didn't open up master and passive, that's why. Oh well, we need to change these anyway. So skinning skill, change that to example logging skill, example mining skill, and example herbalism skill. Okay, I think that's good. I don't think there's anything else where we need example meet the apprentice. Okay. And this needs to be example human unarmed attacks. Okay, good. So let's just save that. We'll back out of here, go over to example master and passive. There, now we're on the right guy. And just check, does he have an animator on him? No. So can I go like paste component as new? There we go, we got an animator. And then I guess we have to swap out everything here. So example Night of the Living Bunnies. You know what? He doesn't need to end any of these quests. So I can just delete all of those. Basically, the elemental quests where you got abilities, they used to have to be turned in, but then I added a feature to the game to allow you to just like auto-complete them right from the item in your bag, so that you didn't have to like run back to a quest giver if you had multiples that you could loot on an enemy. So they're no longer necessary like as turn-ins, so we can remove them. And example, a hard day's work. Example, what's a zombie attack? Example, meet the apprentice. Example, report for duty. Example, you are prepared. Example, you are not prepared. And that looks okay. We'll just change that for capital H. Okay, that looks good. And then we want to do the same thing for example Sir Invincible. We'll just go through and change his unit frame target there to head. And then let's see, does he have an animator on him? No, doesn't look like it. So then we'll want to add the animator. Okay. So I think that'll be okay for all three of those guys. So let's just go throw them in the scene. So that was our example default scene. We can open that up, look at it in the scene view here, and we'll just click F to focus on our UMA vendor. And actually, you know what we want? Where's our, oh, we don't have a default spawn location. Right, I want one of those. So we have a default spawn location prefab, and it's definitely good to have that like in our example scene. So let's just move that to 0, 0, 0, and then focus on that. We're basically just want to align our view to here so that we're looking at the forward Z direction on that prefab. And then I'm just going to move it like 1 meter off so we can sort of tell basically that we're actually spawning at the correct location. And we can just, let's see, unpack that completely and save the scene. And then we want to get our example guys in here. So I'm going to put them, let's see, we have a bunch of like generic guys sort of standing over here where the mouse is. So let's put these guys like over here because all the actual like quest stuff duplicates are over here. So example master impassive, example Sir Invincible, and example apprentice craftsman. Okay, and let's save that, and then we're just gonna try loading the game and see what happens. If we're really lucky, we'll be able to complete a series of quests up to the point where we're required to start gathering stuff. So let's go to the example load game manager and hit play and see how far we can get. Oh, duplicate key name a heavy suit of armor, right, because I copied that quest in there and I actually forgot to rename it to example a heavy suit of armor. Example a heavy suit of armor, and these will be our, I'm going to rename these to invisible plate boots, example invisible plate chest, example invisible plate gloves, example invisible plate helm, example invisible plate legs. Yeah, that looks okay. And this needs to be example refined tastes. Okay, good. So now we have our example a heavy suit of armor quest, and we can actually, who gives that to us again? I think master and passive. Oh no, right, of course, yeah, it's our apprentice craftsman, I think, that gives us that one. So now we can go back and change a heavy suit of armor for, whoops, a heavy suit of armor. For example, a heavy suit of armor. And it's actually referring to a bunch of items that don't exist. So let's just see. If we look in items here and we look in armor, we've got all the cloth stuff, but we don't have the plate stuff. So let's go duplicate these 5 items right here. Good, and then we can drag them down into the example armor folder here. And then we're going to rename them to example invisible plate boots. Invisible plate legs. Invisible plate helm. Invisible plate gloves. And invisible plate chest. And we will need, let's see, some icons for those. And so these are our boots. So we want our sample boots icons. And these are actually, like, these ones aren't included with UMA, so that's why we're using the samples as opposed to the other stuff. The UMA recipe gets to be none because these are invisible. They don't have any UMA recipe. Okay, good. And let's see, I can change all those at the same time, right? Yeah, none, good. and then example gold, change all those at the same time. None of them have learned abilities, so we're all good there. And so basically now we just need to change the names here. So example invisible, and then go over to the chest, do the same thing. And we have a sample chest icon. And then for the gloves, same thing. And we have I think a sample, do we have glove icon? Sample glove icon, yep. And then for the helm, change that name to example invisible. And I think we don't have a helm, but we do have a head icon. We should make a helm icon. Anytime I find one of these 4-letter words here, we want to do that. So, whoops, no, we'll just go to open recent here and find, no, somewhere we have an XCF file. So this is going to be in, I think we put it there, sample magic icon, perfect. So let's zoom in there, and we need to change this out for helm, and then update that to 17, Control Alt to recenter it. It looks like centering is fine, and then export that as sample helm icon. Okay, and then we can go back into Unity and go into our icons folder in the engine right here, and then import new asset and bring in that helm icon, and then change that to sprite, trilinear, no compression, apply. Alright, good. So now we have a helm icon. So then going back down into our armor items here and looking at our invisible plate helm, we can choose a sample helm icon. And then legs, so change that out for example invisible plate legs, and change the icon out for legs icon. Okay, good. So now we have our example invisible armor, which is copies of our regular plate armor, but we just haven't got permission to distribute the UMA models, so that's why it's going to be invisible. So that looks okay. I think at this point, I don't think we'll have any duplicate item keys. Hopefully not. Let's try loading the game and see what happens. And play. Load game. I think I want to try to fix this right now, because this is going to impede our ability to test this. I'm not sure when that issue showed up. I think it might have had something to do with the creation of the new game manager prefab, but all of the loading buttons were just sitting on top of each other. So let's just go and see, does that screen work properly for alpha? Because I think alpha had the copy of the original load game manager. So let's go into the alpha load game manager. And no, something happened to this. I'm not sure what. That is like the oddest thing. So if we go into our scene view here, we'll switch it into 2D, zoom out a little bit, and see if we can figure out what's happening. I don't recall changing anything that should have caused us to lose that ability to have these things look proper in the menu there. So if we go into the UI and interactable UI, and this is going to be player, no, system menu. Yeah, that's right. Okay, and then this is on which one here? The load game window canvas and load game window, load game panel. Okay, let's start with the load game window. Okay, looking at the scene view, our load view game window looks okay. It's about the same or the right size that it should be. If we look at the load game panel, same thing. So it's like hopefully not like a size issue. The left hand size is fine. The navigation pane is fine. The left pane is fine. Even the pane contents is the length that it should be. The button area is 0 size. Okay. So that's kind of interesting. Let's see. We've got an interesting thing happening here. So this load game button, it's 500 by 195, and this load game button is 500 by 0. So what we need to do is figure out why the example load game buttons are that size, but these ones aren't. So the button holder here is 500 by 195. This one's button holder is 500 by 264. Okay, and if the button holder here is 500 by 195 and the load game button is 500 by 195, we have preferred size and min size there, preferred size and min size there. Oops. We have a layout element, preferred width. Like everything looks mostly the same. The Unity UI can be really fun sometimes, messing with it, trying to get it to do what you need. Yeah, that all looks like exactly the same. So if we look at these two button holders, it's interesting, these highlight lines, like this highlight line has zero size. probably because the load game button it's part of has 0 size and it's set to stretch. So because this load game button has size, this highlight line is stretching. So this button holder here, what's the difference between them? Like, not much. This one has a stencil on the bottom, and this one doesn't. I don't know if yeah, now it's got a stencil just because I turn it back on. Okay. So let's see, we've got description background. Honestly, this is like really confusing. What is the difference between these two things? That's causing them, one of them anyway, to not expand to its full size. So the vertical fit of, okay, just a second. Our first load game button has size now. Now all of our load game buttons have, okay, that was really odd. Now they all just snap down. Okay, what happened there? Because I didn't change anything. All I did was like check and uncheck, or like activate and deactivate that one guy. Let's go back in for a minute and take a look at that again. I want to see if I can trigger that again. So if we go into play and we go to load game, and I have like this messed up thing where everything is on top of each other, and then I hit pause, and then if I go down into the UI, and I go to the button area, and I just like activate and deactivate one of those buttons, and then unpause the game, and suddenly they all work. Just like magic. So I think this may, let's see, what does this have to do with? Basically, this has to do with the fact that I think this has to do with the fact that Unity like only does layout redraws when things are active. And you know what? Let's just jump back in because I wanna take a look at this. The Unity UI is like, you got to fight with it to get it to do what you want. So let's go into the load game window again. And you know what, let's go return and then go back. Okay, so basically, you know what, let's just restart this. I think I can demonstrate the issue here without even needing to go into the load game window. Okay, here we are at play, and I hit pause, and we've got a load game panel. The load game panel's got a top row, it's got a navigation, it's got a left pane. also apparently active. Okay. Anyway, no, that's neat. Okay, so there are no load game buttons, so I guess those load game buttons actually do get loaded when we go in there. So let's go to the load game panel, and now we got a bunch of buttons like crammed on top of each other. And so if we pause, we can see all those. Yeah, that's just like, okay. So here we have a problem. Our pane contents are long enough, our button area is not. It's set to the minimum size. What happens if I go like unconstrained? We lose our bar. So we don't want unconstrained. What about preferred size? Okay. Maybe preferred size is the way to go. The reason minimum size used to work is because, I mean, you can see minimum size actually even does work when for whatever reason we activate and deactivate something. I thought this was because basically like Unity doesn't necessarily set window size or like update elements if they're inactive, but those elements were active. We could actually see that when we went in while the game was running. So let's go into the load game panel, because that's the prefab we're dealing with here. And on the left hand side here, we have our navigation window and our pane contents and our button area. And the button area is set to minimum size. What happens if we set it to preferred size? I think nothing at this point because there's nothing inside of it, but maybe, hopefully, it'll be the right size when we go back into the game. So let's open that up. And if we go to play and load game, okay, yeah, I guess so. We have a panel that looks okay. And this is alpha. We don't want alpha. We want our example load game manager. So we'll go back to our example load game manager. And hit play. And then right, I haven't changed those in the example load game manager, so I think we're still okay. What I want to do is I want to look for one of our sample guys here, player name in the default sample scene. I think he is as far as we need to be. Our dynamic character avatars are not showing up properly, except for this guy's. So let's see if we can figure that out. And then these guys are supposed to have dialogues as well. Well, specifically Invincible is. He's supposed to have a dialogue for find help. And right now he doesn't. So let's go and see, first of all, back to our console. No active race set. Okay. So that's what happens. I guess we have to have our active race set on those units. I thought it did that by default, but I guess not. So let's go to our apprentice craftsman here. And I think, let me just look at the dynamic character avatar here. Just human male DCS and a bunch of default recipes. Okay. Yeah, just human male DCS. I think that'll do it. Example master and passive, looking at his dynamic, where is it? Did I like forget to put a dynamic character avatar on him? I may have forgotten to put a dynamic character avatar on him. That would certainly explain why he didn't have a character model. Okay, let's see if that works. And then example Sir Invincible, I did, but I do need to set his race as human male DCS. Although honestly, I think what might even just be better is just to copy. Can I just copy this component? Yeah, dynamic character avatar. Let's just go down on a master and passive and paste the component values. They can all be wearing Challenger boots, sure. And then Sir Invincible, and we'll just paste those component values. Alright, that looks good. The expressions recipe is a good one because it keeps their mouths closed rather than like hanging slack-jawed if the animations that are being used don't have like basically jawbone animations. So let's try that again. And load game. And go find our sample guy down here. Okay. It's a little better. At least we have characters for them now. But Sir Invincible doesn't have our dialogue yet. So let's just see if we can figure out why. So that dialogue is available as a result of the dialogue interactable. And he has two dialogues, example find help and example question invincible. So I think maybe there's something wrong with the example find help dialogue. Prerequisite for that is example Back to the Future. Let's actually just look through and make sure all those are open so we don't have any hidden prerequisites. Okay, that looks a little better. Go back into save, hit play. And we can play, load game again. Go back to our example scene. Ah, better. Now he's got an icon. Okay. Okay. Interesting. So once we get the find help, we should be able to turn it in on him as well. let me just see if I can figure out what is happening there. So we go back to example Sir Invincible. And if we look at his quest, oh, I didn't change any of his quests. I think I changed like everything else on him, right? Except for his quests. Let's open these all back up again just to make sure everything else looks fine, I think. Yeah, okay, so I just need to fix that stuff there. So example report back to camp. Example investigate the mines. Example a strange glowing crystal. Example the crystal mine. Example a gift fit for a king. Example a little help from my friends. Example kill the ringleader. Example kill 5 undead. Example report for duty. Example you are not prepared. And example join the Sunsworn. Okay, so we can turn around, we can talk to him. Alright, awesome. Yep, cool. And that works, and those work. Huh. Ah, okay, I see why that looks so funny. The level 5 word is over top of there. It looks a lot better when you've got graphics in the background. When you've got text in the background, it doesn't look so fantastic. So join the faction, good. Okay, and then we can go over to him and complete the next part of the quest. Let's just save that. Okay, and now Master Impassive is supposed to give us a quest to go meet the apprentice. So just save the game and exit out, and let's see if we can figure out why Master Impassive doesn't want to give us that quest. Okay, example meet the apprentice. We might... Okay, we have to accept example... No, example Night of the Living Bunnies has to be in our log before we get the apprentice. There we go. Example, you are not prepared. That's the problem. I had missed another example word in one of these things here. So let's go back to our example load game manager, play, load game, go back to our sample guy here. And there we go, awesome. So now okay, cool. And we get our quests, and we can go over to this guy, and then we can complete that. And we shown all of our skills properly. Okay, good. And now if we save that, actually, you know, one thing that's been kind of bugging me here is this is main, and it really should say menu. So I'm just going to go into the example load game manager here, and this one, sample main. Let's check. Do we have a menu icon? Yeah, okay, that's better. And I'm going to apply this directly to the game manager because I want the word menu on that. Especially when all those things are so generic, it's important that the main menu has at least a half decently reasonable description there. Okay, let's see. I think what I'll do is I will probably actually split this Birch Grove prefab thing up into a few episodes. So right now, let's see, we got the Birch Grove camp NPCs, and I think we'll just end it here. What we have to do now is we're on basically the bunny quest. And so now what we need to do is we need to start going to the we need to make basically the combat scene and then put all of those guys up there on the combat scene that we have to do combat with so that we can finish this quest. So as always, if you like this type of content or you want to see more of it in the future, just like the video, subscribe to the Cohesion channel, or leave a note in the comments telling me what you'd like to see. And thanks, and I'll see you next time.